Yo, Jono and YouTube. This is going to be a bit of a strange one because I don't want to do my videos while driving because of the sound quality. And I live where there's not very many lights, i.e. in the country. And so I'm taking a video while static, but it's dark. So all you can really see is a few lights in the background and maybe the odd car that'll go past. So I don't know if it's any point in looking at this screen at all. Just listen to my dulcet tones instead. I've got an epic video coming up today. I've got a lot to tell you about. Hopefully it's going to be of interest. I want to tell you about a mistake that I made and give you a tip if you live in Birmingham. But let's talk about what I've done first of all today. So this morning I had a job booked in, which was my first wait and return job I've ever done. And it was from Sleaford going to Lincoln and then back to Sleaford. And I got for that job £60. It was for just looking at the details, it was 19 miles each way, so 38 miles in total, and it was designed to be done by a short wheelbase van. And I think it's a regular thing. Maybe it might be just a weekly thing. First time I come across it, but when I asked the guys, they said it was a regular thing. The people at the pickup and the drop off. So I might try and do it more regularly. It was a nice little job. So I picked up at Sleaford. I left home. I had to be there for 8 o'clock. I left home just before 7:30. Slightly misjudged it and got there because of the traffic in Sleaford. I got there at 8:05. And because the first time to this place, I couldn't quite find it first time, so it was a little bit, about a minute or so extra trying to find it. And I got it unloaded, and this is my first mistake that I want to tell you about. So because I'm being quite zealous with my strapping now, I had 2 pallets I picked up. They weren't very full, but they had stuffed cellophanes to them. So I made sure that I strapped the pallet itself. So the front pallet, I put a strap through the pallet itself to the sides of my van, and then the back pallet, I put a strap around the pallet itself at the back of my van, so it's sort of holding the back pallet from going forwards and holding the front pallet from going forward as well, but from the opposite sides of the pallet. And then I put a strap over the top of each of the loads so that I had 4 straps in total and there was nothing going to move. And I was quite pleased with that, so I was pleased with myself. I got myself to the drop-off location and found the guy to take it off, and he was very friendly. I wanted to go to the toilet, so we got the first pallet off, and then I went to the toilet while he was going to get ready for the second pallet. And I came back just in time, and then he was pulling the pallet off and my van moved back, and I thought, oh no, I've left the handbrake off. So I rushed to the front of the van, put the handbrake on, but it was already on, so I just put it on a bit more. And then came back around the back and he pulled this pallet, and then suddenly there's a snapping sound, and I assumed that it was my strap that had broken, but actually what had happened is I didn't explain why. So the back pallet obviously can be picked up directly from the forklift, just coming into the back of the van and picking it up. But because you've got 2 pallets end to end, the pallet that's been put on first has been pushed into the van too far to be picked up by the forklift. So what I've learned very early on is you put a strap around the pallet and then bring the ends of the strap onto the front of the forklift, he'll then reverse the forklift, pulling the pallet towards the back of the van, take your strap off, and then you can lift it off with the forklift as usual. So I put the strap on and then stood back, and that's when the strap I thought had broken. But what actually happened is the central piece of wood on the pallet that I put the strap around just came away from the pallet. And I realised I hadn't taken off the pallet strap at the front of my front pallet. So it's still securely strapped in. So I'm pleased in one respect that my strapping technique was pretty secure, but it was quite embarrassing that I had forgotten to do that. And I apologised to the forklift driver and I explained what happened. Got it unstrapped, then we took it off. So that was my mistake for today that I can think of. I'm sure I made loads of other ones, but that's what I want to share with you. Then I got myself, and the return journey in this particular case is to take some empty pallets back to the initial place if there are any. And on this occasion there were 8 pallets that were empty. He forklifted them on. I did a second POD for him to sign, and then took a photo, strapped it up, and went off my way back to Sleaford. So I got back, and I reckon I got back and unloaded about 9:30. So that in total, from leaving the home to getting the wait and return job done, was just over 2 hours. And I got £60 for that job, and I try and get £30 an hour for my work if I can. That's kind of been something I've decided on more recently. My waiting time is based on £20 an hour, but I worked out that if I'm going to do work, if I'm trying, for example, if I'm going to work out for a whole day, for example, of 10 hours, I really want to have £300, which is £250 for what I want to earn, plus £50 worth of fuel. So that came out to me as being a £30 per hour price for my work. So I worked that out recently, and that's quite good to have in my head, that actually when I'm doing work, try and go for £30 an hour if I can. So looking at that job, that is £30 an hour, but not including the fuel. So it's not quite my target, but it's not bad. It seems to be a fair price for that job. So I'll try to do that again. It was a good job. And then I was faced with trying to find a job from Sleaford at about, say, 20 to 10. And there are a few jobs around, and I did win one, and it was going, it was going from Lincoln to somewhere that I don't want to go to. And a slight aside at this point, when I tell my partner I've got a job, guess where I'm going, she'll say one of 2 places, and she's always right. She'll either say Scotland, or she'll say London. In this case, I got a job from Lincoln going to London, and it was 160 miles, and they wanted for that a short wheelbase job, short wheelbase van, sorry. And I just bid £1 a mile, not including my dead miles to get there. And the reason why I did that was I wanted to get myself going. I did that bid, I won that bid at 10 to 10, so it wasn't very long after I'd finished my first job. So I felt that £160, get that job done. Even though it's in London, I had plenty of day left to earn some more money. So I got that loaded up in Lincoln, but there was a bit of a story about this, and I want to come back to this in terms of communication, and I might forget, but if I forget this video, I'll do it in another video. So in this particular video, the shipper that called me and gave me the job, he sounded really nice. You can just tell when someone's friendly and helpful. And he said to me, other drivers have been to this location, and they said don't go in where I've told you, go to this street instead. So I was thanked him for the help. He put the notes on the booking to say where to go, and so I thought that's really helpful. So I made my way to Lincoln. Unfortunately, it was quite hard to get to the location, even with the extra instructions. So I got actually to Lincoln at about 10:30, 25 to 11. But it wasn't until 11:15 where I actually managed to get to the right part. I was going to a new restaurant that's being built in the middle of the city, or in a pedestrianised area, and you had to go around the back to get to it, but it was right close to the river, so you couldn't get in from the road at the back. You had to go to a side road off the dual carriageway. Anyway, I eventually found it, and they were in the middle of constructing it, really, or renovating it, so lots of construction work going on, and also it's a very busy pedestrianised area. So I found the person who's going to help me with what I was going to take. They told me what it was, and they said I could park around the back of the building if I asked the construction guys to let me in, which they did do. So I got loaded up, and then when I left the site, which was about 11:05, I stopped and rang the shipper, and I just gave him very specific instructions about how to get to the particular site. I said, "Are you going to be doing other loads to here or from here?" And he said that he was. So I said, "Although you did try and help me, if I give you specific instructions." So I told him specifically which road to take, and he had Google Maps up, and he could see the road view where I was talking about. So I'm hoping that he was able to give the next driver a very specific instruction about getting there, because it will save them a lot of time. And I think that's something that I felt is just part of my job, is to help the shipper to know how, where the drivers are going and help the drivers to get there. If it's a place they're never going to go to again, there's no point doing it. But obviously, if it's a regular job, or regular likely to be regular jobs, then it's going to help the shipper to come across as being more informed with the next driver that comes along. So I think it's definitely worth it. So I made my way from there down to London, and I was expected to be arriving about 3:30, but it was South London, so I had to go across the river, and I did it without tolls. So I expected to get there about 3:30. I ended up getting there on site at 3 o'clock. But what I did do, because it was going to a residential address, I did phone 1 hour before I arrived to the mobile number that I was given for the person. And I went straight to answer phone. So I left a message saying who I was working for, and I was going to be there in about an hour to deliver their goods. And then half an hour later, I rang again, and it went straight to a voicemail again. I wasn't going to leave another message, because I thought one message is enough. If I haven't got the first one, I'm not going to get the second one. And then I thought I better ring the shipper and explain that I've tried to contact the customer, but there's no answer. And I was on the phone to the shipper, they answered the phone, and then I had a call in from the mobile number I just called, which was the customer. So I quickly got off the call with the shipper and answered the call from the customer, and they said that there would be someone at home, but there's a bit of confusion, because they said they'd told me there'd be someone at home. And what I realised they'd done is, I had said I was my name from the shipper that I was working for. They had called the shipper apparently and told the shipper there'll be someone at home when he gets there, but no one at the shipper had deigned to tell me to confirm there was going to be someone at the address. So I was kind of left out of the loop. Now, in the end, it wasn't a problem, because I spoke to the customer directly when they called me back after half an hour. But if the shipper had called me and said, "We've had contact from the customer, they're definitely going to be there when you get there," I wouldn't have called the second time. It wouldn't have sounded like I didn't know what was going on, or the company didn't know what was going on. So when it comes to communication, it's a two-way thing. And what I want to say, I'm not going to criticise the shipper, because there was obviously the person taking the call was just a person working for the company, and the person I spoke to was probably someone a bit more experienced, or a bit more in the know. So these things happen, mistakes do happen. But I do want to share the concept of communication being effective. So if I know something, in my job, I'm the driver, there is a customer I'm going to. The customer may or may not know about me. They may or may not know about the shipper. They may or may not know about the person who's giving them the goods. So we've got the customer I'm going to, the customer I'm collecting from, the shipper and me. There's 4 people in that chain. So really, if one person in that chain tells somebody else in that chain some information, what I'm saying is everyone in that chain should think, should the other 2 in this chain know this thing? So as a driver, for example, if I'm going to talk to the customer directly and tell them something, I think it makes sense that you also tell the shipper, because that's who you're working for. Sometimes I've done that. The shipper says, I don't want to know, just tell the customer, and they don't need to know. But I'd rather tell too many people than not enough people. And let's say the shipper, I tell the shipper something about the load, they might need to tell their customer about that. Often they do. Often they need to tell the customer something that I've told the shipper. So those 4 parties, if one of them tells one of the other something, the other 2 should be thinking, no, that person should be thinking, should I tell the other 2 people this as well? And if that was to happen all the time, everyone would be in the loop all the time. It would be so easy. It would be less confusion. I don't expect it's ever going to happen, but I think I just want to share that as my approach to communication. I don't always do it myself. Sometimes I forget, or I know a shipper doesn't want to know, or I don't always ring other customers if it's not relevant. But in general, if things go wrong, it could be avoided if you just let everyone in the loop know what you know. And if everyone does that, everyone knows where you stand. I think it's always better to tell more than tell less. Right, where was I? So I got that delivered, and then I was in South London, and I was expecting to get a job to Brighton, like I've done twice this week, and then have to try and find a way from Brighton home. But I didn't. I got a surprising job. I put two bids on. Let me just tell you when it happened. So I was looking from about 3:15 by the time I finished everything at the site, and I put some bids on, and the one that I got, I accepted it at 3:30. So very soon, about a quarter of an hour after I'd finished with the job. And it was close. It was only about 9 miles trip, and I was about 10 minutes from the pickup. No, sorry, it was 10 minutes, about 5 miles, 10 minutes pickup to the pickup place. And then the actual trip itself was 16 miles. But it was across London. It's going from London, South London, to Grays in Essex. Actually, the Thurrock area by the shopping centre. And so I put on a bid of my minimum, which is £50, 50. And I did not expect to get it because it's with a national shipper. I had contact with them before, and they tend, in my experience, to be wanting very cheap prices. So the fact that I got £50 for a 16-mile job, albeit in London, I was surprised about. And I think they have a contract that delivers for one of the big overnight parcel delivery companies, because every time I've had a job for them, it's been delivering to one of those depots. So I was surprised to get a call. She was very nice, and I got the bid, and it was to be picked up at 4 o'clock and to be delivered to this depot. So I made my way straight away to the pickup place. There's a guy outside, and I said, I'm here a bit early, just let you know I'm here when you're ready. And he said, not going to be here till 4, but I'll let you know when I'm ready. And so I said, I'll wait out here in the van, just out on the side of the road. And he was fine with it. He was actually fine. It was all very amenable. So I then sat in my van, and that's when I did all my comment replies. I was busy there replying to all my comments on my YouTube videos. Having quite a nice time there doing that. And then about 10 to 4, 5 to 4, he came up to me and gave me this box of items to take. He wanted to keep the box, so I just took them out and put them in my own box. So 5 little items to go to an overnight delivery place. So I got off site at 4 o'clock, which was really good. Made my way in very heavy traffic, obviously it's Friday, it's London, to Thurrock area. Eventually managed to get there, and what I was going to say was I got there at 20 past 5, and when I get to these places I don't like going there because they're all very busy. There's no one there to help you unless you're a bit insistent, and I don't like that, and you're never quite sure where you're meant to park or where you're meant to go. But I just walked in with this box, got the first person that I could see to help me. He took them off me, took a photo on the floor next to him, asked him to sign my pod, and he didn't want to do it. Bless him, he was quite a young chap. I just felt that he couldn't do it, and I said, it doesn't matter, it's just for my benefit. But he said, I'll get a manager. There wasn't really a manager around, so the next person that walked past in an orange top, I just grabbed onto them verbally and asked them to sign my form, and they did it straight away. So I was actually in and out of there really quickly in the end. I was off site by 5:30. So nice easy job. And then I thought, well, I'll make my way home looking for jobs, but that's not been too bad a day so far. Right. And it was 5:30, and it's quite light and quite busy, and I was off on the right side of London. I was north, by this time I was north of the river, and I was close to the M25. So just go around to M25, up the I think it was M11 I did today, towards Cambridge. There was no jobs that came up, but it got dark about, I'm going to say 7ish. Well, yeah, I put my lights on, and they weren't. I was in the motorway, and I didn't notice anything. But as it got darker and darker, I thought these lights aren't working very well, and because I was on the motorway, I couldn't quite tell when there's cars around me, and it wasn't until I was sort of on my own, coming off the motorway, so I was probably about 45 minutes from home, and I realised both my headlights weren't working. And it was getting darker and darker. It wasn't, at this point, it wasn't too bad, but the lights were on around me, and I had 45 minutes to get home, and I thought, this isn't a good situation to be in. So I did put on my lights so that the people behind me could see I had my lights on, and I just stuck behind a lorry as much as I could, or if I was on A road, but then I had to at some points when I was on my own stick it on full beam, and I ended up coming close to home. I put in to Google where were the nearest Halfords, and my local Halfords was open to 8 o'clock, and I was due to get there if I rushed at 7:50, and by this point it was probably about 7:20, no, 7:35, 7:40. It was quite dark, and I was trying to get there with my headlights on full beam, trying not annoy too many people. And I was hoping when I got there they'd be able to fit the bulb straight away and I wouldn't have missed them. But bless them, I got there at 10:02. There's a brilliant guy. His name is Billy. I'm going to give him a shout out. Not that I'll ever watch this video, but Billy was brilliant. I might even break a habit of a lifetime and do some feedback for him on his on the retail website. But he fitted my new headlights for me and a side light that I realised was out as well, and did it all within the 10 minutes before they closed. So that, and it was also quite good value. It's about £41 for the 3 lights and the fitting. Considering I can't do it myself and I had to do it for work, it was, I thought, good value. Right. Oh, and also at this point I had 3 miles left in my tank of fuel, so I had to go and get some fuel. And as I'm sure if you've seen any other videos you'll be aware, the fuel's going up and up and up. This week it's gone up. I've got 2 fuel cards. It's gone up by 5p, so I'm paying loads on my fuel cards But actually, to be fair, my pump prices are quite high around where I live as well. So I definitely, when I'm out around the country, if I find anything cheaper than my home price, I'm going to start filling up without my fuel card with local pumps. Now, why am I mentioning that? Because it's Friday today and my pump prices start on Monday. So if I get any fuel today, it's at the old price. So that's why I got it filled up today, because it was at this week's price. There's another reason why I filled up today, and that's because I've got a job for tomorrow. As I was coming up, I was looking at jobs, and a job came up going from Boston to somewhere. Can you guess where I'm going tomorrow? It's not London. I've got a job going from Boston to Motherwell tomorrow, and it is 200. Let me just get it in front of me. I think it's 288 miles. And it says on the CX5, well, just less than 5 hours for the journey. So I'm taking it as being a 5-hour journey. So half an hour to get there, 5 hours there, and 5 hours back. So that's probably going to be an 11-hour driving day. Probably going to be 12 or 13 hours by the time I've had some breaks. And I got £325 for it, 325. So I worked out, what will I earn if I just do that job after fuel, and it will be £234. So it's not it's not a bad day's work. I'm guaranteed, probably doesn't get cancelled. I'm guaranteed, or probably doesn't get cancelled, or I break down. I'm guaranteed to get £234 tomorrow, and I've always got the option of trying to find any sort of job from Motherwell coming back down south. Now, it's unlikely I'll get a single job coming back down, but in my experience on a Saturday, there is the odd job around the northwest Birmingham way, and I can choose to come back the northeast down the A1M, or I could choose to come down the M6 on the west. So I'm reasonably hopeful I'll just get a £50 job. That's a full day's pay after fuel. Now, obviously, it is a Saturday, so there are some downsides, but I'm quite happy to work on a Saturday if I'm going to get a full day's work. For me, getting a full day's work is my biggest priority. I don't really mind which day that is, or which days that they are. So that's tomorrow. I've got a job for tomorrow. I've also got a job for Monday booked in. So I may as well tell you about that. It's from Sleaford to Sheffield. It's 50 miles exactly, and that is for a long wheelbase job. And I just picked it up. I picked it up a little bit cheaper than I usually do. I put £80 on it, and it's not too bad a price, to be fair. £80 for 50 miles. So I've got a good start on Monday, or at least I got a start. The reason why I did that, it's a 10 o'clock start from Sleaford, so I don't need to get up too early. I might even find something from Peterborough to Sleaford before that, who knows. But it gets me to Sheffield, which Sheffield should be quite a good area to get a job from on Monday. But I also have got one route booked in for next week from my regular shipper. So I'll tell you about that as well. So it is going from the Wirral to Wakefield to Matlock, and then down to High Wycombe. So 3 pickups, then down to High Wycombe, drop off. And so if I'm anywhere near the northwest for next week, I'll do that job. But Sheffield on Monday, I could easily get from there to either Wakefield, well, basically it is Wakefield, or get across to the Wirral. So I could even do on Monday my booked in job, which will be a great start to the week. So I've had a really good day in terms of I've done 3 CX jobs and got myself home. I've got a job for tomorrow, paying basically a full day's pay, or at least a potential for a full day's pay. I've got a job for Monday booked in, and I've got a job for my regular shipper for next week. So I can't complain about that. It's kind of like a full bingo card of jobs booked in. I'm not going to do my weekly stats today because I'm working tomorrow, so I'll do my weekly stats after tomorrow. But I will give my daily ones for today, so what I've achieved today. So they are as follows. So I'm basing it on getting home, and I based it on getting home from London, but without the stop off to do my diesel. So it's going to be reasonably accurate to the time of the day. So I did today 370 miles, 370 miles. Oh, I got some fuel, as I said today, which is giving me a new average weekly fuel price for this week. So this week I've done 3 fill-ups, and so I've now got 3 different prices for a full tank of diesel, sorry. And then I've averaged those 3 prices out to give me a weekly average for this week. It's 15.69 pence per mile that I've driven. So at that rate and that mileage, I've spent £58.05 today. And today I earned £270, 270. That was the £60 job from Sleaford to Lincoln and back, the £160 from Lincoln to London, and the £50 from London to Grays. And that means my earnings today after fuel are £212. Is that right? Yeah. If I can give you, I will just give you one figure. So if I take a spreadsheet, I can select the 5 daily figures for this week, and it gives me a sum and an average. So if I wasn't going to be working tomorrow, I can tell you that I have worked 5 days this week, and I've earned on average £201 after fuel. Now, that is less than my target, but it is a week where I've got home every night. And it has made me think about, with winter coming up, as you can see out of the window now, whether I need to think about having a strategy where I get home each night. Now, I don't need to do it right now, but I think it's probably worth me doing an experiment where I formally try a week of lots of tramping and a week of no tramping, and just sort of compare and contrast them. So I think I will do that. I think next week I'll do a week of tramping and just see how the economics of it works. I'll try and do not very much in terms of dead miles. And then maybe the week after I'll try doing a week of non-tramping, and just see if the pattern of less earnings is consistent. So yes, that's that. Where are we in terms of time? It's half an hour. So there's a couple of other things I want to tell you about. I'll put my light on because I wrote them down. I can't read my writing. It's always the way, isn't it? I'm going to tell you about yesterday. I think it's a little story about how I dealt with yesterday, and it tells you, I think, a bit about my character. It's not necessarily going to shine me in the greatest of light, but it's true. And some of you might be similar to me, who knows? And some of you might think, that's stupid, who knows? So on my way home last night from London, I was on the A1M coming up towards Peterborough from London, and there was a junction that was closed, if you know the area, by Sawtry. And so I had to come off the A1M and went into Sawtry, and there was a diversion sign that went south, and I was heading north. Now, obviously, the diversion sign is there to divert people safely and quickly around the closed junction. So most people will just follow the diversion. But in my head, I thought, I don't want to go south, I want to go north. I'm this close to home now, I want to go north. So I ignored the diversion sign, I just headed the opposite way through Sawtry going north, thinking I'll find a way to get home from here. I soon got lost, and I had to kind of look at the map, but even when I got lost, I refused to go back to that point and go south. I decided to look at the map, zoomed out, found a road that went alongside the A1M going north, and just followed that and hoped eventually that would get me back to the correct place. So the idea of me taking a diversion, being told to do something which is in my best interests, but is counterintuitive or against what my mind wants. My mind didn't want to go south, my mind wanted me to go north. So quite stubbornly, I just went north. It's just something that sometimes I just have to do. I just have to go with what my mind says. It's more comforting to do that. And in the end, I was lost for a little bit, but then I did make my way to the next junction without too much hassle. So it wasn't a big problem, but I was thinking at the time, yeah, this is not, most people probably wouldn't do this, but you are. Okay. Next thing. Oh yes, I promised that I would give, if you live in Birmingham, a top tip. Right, let me tell you about this top tip. For the last couple of weeks, there's been a job advertised from Lincoln to Birmingham, and it keeps coming up quite early in the morning, and I've always been intrigued about doing it. I bid on it once. I bid £90 on it one day, and it was one of those jobs which is on all day, gets reposted over and over again. And this one day, it's probably 2 weeks ago, I put a £90 bid on, and it kept reposting. I kept it on £90, and then it went to £80, quotes for £80, it said in the notes. So I put £90 on again, saying I put that saying, if you're stuck, I can do this for £90. And then they've cancelled it and put it on for £85, quotes for £85. And I thought, well, I don't really want to go there now. I'm not going to do this and just stop bidding. But so I'm telling you that because on that day they would have accepted £85, and I think it's for a small van. I can't quite remember. But next time it comes up, I'll find out. It's not for a long wheelbase. I'm sure it's not. But it comes up. It's been coming up every day. So my tip is, if you live in Birmingham and you're going to find yourself towards Lincoln, look out for that job, because it's pretty much a daily thing, and it'll get you home. And I'm sure you'll get 70 or 80 quid quite easily for that job. So it's 5 o'clock. Yeah, so it's 5 o'clock in the evening. So if you're going to be there at the end of the day and you want to get home, then get yourself near Lincoln and bid on that job. It doesn't really help me because I don't want to go away from home at 5 o'clock in the evening. My parents do live around Birmingham, so maybe one day I might do that job to see what it is, just to get across there. Yeah, maybe I will. Maybe on Friday I'll do it. Yeah, so anyway, so top tip, if you live in Birmingham and you want a job, you're stuck in Lincoln, look out for that 5 o'clock one in the evening. Okay, what's next? Oh yes, that was the other thing. You may remember, if you have been watching all my videos, that a few weeks ago I had a really bad experience doing a multi-drop day, and I was never going to do it again, and I knew I should have done it in the first place, but at the time they refused to pay me. Not the people that gave me the job, the third party. The people who the shipper who gave me the job were really nice, and I did have a reasonable amount of confidence that they would end up giving me the money, but they had to get the money off their customer, who was I'm calling the third party, who was doing the job for, who was, in my view, dodgy. Their app was dodgy and their whole way of working was dodgy. Well, I got paid for that job, so big up for the third party that gets the shipper that gave me the job. You did come through. I got paid for it. Well done. It wasn't a small amount of money as well. It was a significant amount of money. It's £200, I think, plus VAT. And then on the same day in that video, I did explain that one of my regular shippers that I do quite a lot of work for now, I had messed up because I hadn't kept a piece of paper that had the details of the order on. I just did my own pod and took a photo of the goods. And he explained to me that the customer needed the paperwork, and I understood that. And I said, fair enough, I made a mistake. If you can't pay me because they won't pay you, then I will understand. But I got paid for that job as well. So he did do what he did do. He would fight for me, and he got the payment. And ever since that day, I have always used the customer paperwork. And I now don't do two bits of paperwork now. I don't use my pod if there's a customer paperwork. So that experience of that going wrong, I did change my the way I work. I've written down about co-loading. Just a quick point. I've spoken in the past about what co-loading is and when I would do it, and I don't do very much of it anymore. And this is the reason. When I first started, in my first week, I did two co-loads because one, the customer wanted me to do it, and two, I asked permission and they did it. I was going past Leicester, and I got a job from Leicester to Birmingham, and so I thought when I first started this, I thought co-loading was a great way of legitimately making some more money. But the thing about co-loading is you have to get the permission from everyone, which is a bit of a hassle, and it's quite hard to get a job that's going in the right direction that's not going to interfere with your current job. So it's really very, very difficult to get a suitable co-load. If you're going to go, like tomorrow, I'm going to go from Boston to Motherwell, it is probably feasible that I might, as I go past Sheffield, get another possible job from Sheffield or Leeds going up to Scotland, going to Glasgow, say. So that might work, but it'll have to be going exactly at the time I'm going past, and I'll have to be going exactly in the right direction, and also be exactly the right size parcel. So for it to be the right size, the right time, and the right direction, it's quite difficult to get that to work as a co-load. Sometimes it does, and then you've got to get permission. Even when that happens, you've got to get permission from both parties. So actually, I don't tend to worry about co-loading much anymore. I do look out for it when I've got some space, but I don't worry too much about getting it because it's so difficult to get the right circumstances. So I think that co-loading can be a bit of red herring, I think, with this job. If you're new maybe and you're thinking that's a way of making money, well, yes and no. If you're lucky, if you have a particular route maybe that you're doing regularly and you have space in your van and everyone knows it, maybe you can fit it into your job. But if you're going around the country at different places, it's highly unlikely you'll get a good suitable co-load. So I've kind of given up on worrying about getting a co-load. It's like now I just regard it as being a possible bonus. But and the point I'm saying here, sorry, I haven't been very clear. The point I'm saying here is I don't now price on anything assuming I'm going to get a co-load. I price everything at full rates, and I will still look for a co-load, and it'll be at a full price for the co-load, or maybe marginally less. But I don't go in at a low price for my first job expecting to get a co-load because I think I just won't do it. When I started, I did a backload job from London to Scotland, and I was hoping to get a co-load on the way, and I did not do it. It was an 8-hour journey. I couldn't find a co-load anywhere. I ended up losing quite a lot of money on that because I was pricing it incorrectly. So I do not price for co-loading. I price full prices all the time. And that brings me to my last bit of thing I want to talk about, which is a bit about pricing. I think pricing is quite an interesting topic. I find it fascinating, and there's lots you can say about pricing. And I want to share with you, I suppose, a metaphor about how I think about my pricing strategy. And it's not all the time. but it might be useful for some of you to see how I think of it. And I want to try to describe to you a visual thing. So imagine this in your mind. Imagine a graph with a normal distribution. If you're not sure what that means, it's where you have like a bell curve, where you have along the horizontal axis a line that runs low at the left hand side, goes up into a dome shape in the middle of the graph, then back down at the end of the graph on the right hand side to a point. So at the extremes there's less, and in the middle there's more of the thing you're measuring. And I want you to imagine that normal distribution, but the bottom axis is the price of a job per mile, and the vertical axis is the number of jobs. So I think of pricing in that sort of way. I think that there are and let's just take, for the sake of argument, because I think most people understand this, a small van job, because most people would know what that would be: one pallet or a box or a bag, something small that fits in a car or a van. So small van jobs, there'll be a pricing distribution for all those jobs. At the bottom scale, so on the left hand side of this graph, you're going to have, let's say, 20 pence per mile. Very few jobs will get sold at 20 pence per mile, because no sane driver is going to do a job for 20 pence per mile. I know some of you are laughing at this point, but that's what I'm going to say. At least you shouldn't. And then if there'll be a few more jobs at 30 pence per mile, more than there is at 20 pence per mile available. And there'll be a few more jobs than that at 40 pence per mile. And probably at 50 pence per mile, you're going to get a reasonable number of jobs. But I would guess that most of the jobs get covered at between 60 and say 70 pence per mile. And then at say 75 pence per mile, there'll be quite a lot of jobs, but less than the maximum. At 80 pence, there'll be still quite a lot, but not quite as many as there are later on. But then getting to extremes, there'll be 90 pence per mile, there'll be some, but not many. £1 per mile, there will be some, but maybe not too many. £1.10? Probably unlikely. Now, I'm hoping you've got the idea of a normal distribution in terms of pricing, and that I just think that's a fact, that there'll be, most prices will be in the middle of the range. I don't know what that range is. I'm saying 70 to 80p. It could be 75 to 85. It could be 65 to 75. Somewhere around 65 to 85p is where the bulk of the work will be sold at. But some jobs will get sold at 90p, £1. Some will get sold at 50p, 40p a mile. Now, I think that by the very nature of people's way they think, most people try and hit the middle of that curve. They try and get the jobs at the mid price. So they're thinking, I've got a small van, or I'm going to do a small van job. I reckon most jobs are at 70p, 80p a mile. I'm going to bid 80p or 75p per mile for this job. And you're going to get a decent number of hits at that rate, depending on other factors, depending on the time of the day, who else is around you, your feedback maybe, loads of different things, the time of the day of the week, the area of the country, so there's loads of different factors that affect that. Now, I don't look at that. This is how I look at that double distribution, whereas I want to be at the upper end of that double distribution. I want to be at the pound mark. Now, I'll be bidding £1 a mile for small van jobs most of the time. And I realise that there are less jobs available at that price. But there are some, and I get that price enough times at the moment that it works for me. The system works. The strategy works. Now, there's a couple of caveats that I want to give with this. There have been times where it just hasn't worked. I could have been there all day and never got £1 a mile for a small van job. And there are I've done this job for 6 months from March to September. I haven't done it for a whole year yet. So I bet you come January, I can't do the same strategy, because I bet you that the distribution will shift down, that there'll be very few jobs for £1 from anyone. So right now I'm able to put my expectation at the higher end. And what that means for me is I have to perhaps put on more bids. I might have to put on 20 bids before I get a hit. Whereas if you're bidding 80 PMR, you might put on 10 or 5 bids and get a hit. A hit being offered the job. But I'm prepared to wait out. I'm prepared to wait for all the others to get their jobs at 80p, and I'll go in at £1. So I just look at it as I'm looking to provide a quality service, and I'm prepared to wait for that job. So I suppose what I'm saying is another way of saying what I've just said is you just bid what you're prepared to do the job for, which is absolutely correct. So if you're prepared to do the job for 80p, fine, do it. And most people, I think, will settle on that sort of level. Whereas I'm not going to do that. I want to bid £1, and then if I have to go down, I might go down a little bit. And so far, as I said, that strategy, I'm getting work for that. And maybe what I should do is do a week where I just do small van jobs and show you whether that works. I won't get as much money as with my long van that I would do, but it might just be interesting to see, can somebody using the structure I'm doing at this time of the year get £1 a mile on average? It might be worth doing it as an experiment. Now, I'm not saying that my strategy will work for you, because it might not. I'm just saying that if you pitch yourself at the middle of that normal distribution, you are losing out on any job that's higher. If I pitch myself at the higher end of the distribution, I can capture those jobs that will go for higher money. And this is my last point. When a job comes up on the system, I don't know the background to that job. It might be it's an urgent job that the customer is a high value customer for that shipper, and they're going to get it done no matter what, and therefore they value the feedback or you being really close to that job more than the price. You don't know. It might be that job is picking up from a driver that's broken down, because that's not always stated, and therefore the shipper's prepared to put in the extra money because they need it covered. It might be that there's a bit of handballing, but not too much, and you can get away with more money because they tell you there's handballing and get more money for it. Or there could be a whole load of reasons why you could get more than you expect for a job. If you never assume you're going to get £1 a mile, if you never bid £1 a mile, let's say for small van jobs, you're never going to get it. Whereas I just assume I'll only get £1 a mile, and I don't sometimes get it, but often I do. I suppose it's another way of saying about my framing. I'm framing my approach to this as being at the higher end of this distribution figure, and so far, at least, fingers crossed, it seems to be working for me. I'm making my target. Now, I hope that makes sense. I want to reiterate a couple of things. I'm not saying you should do it, because you do you. You do what's best for you. I'm doing what's best for me, and I'm trying to explain why it's best for me. And secondly, it might not always work for me. I might have to change my strategy. But at the moment, that approach works for me. So I'm pleased. And I'm a newbie. You expect, I don't know, maybe if you've been doing this for 10 years, my target of £250 per day after fuel is small. Maybe you get that because you've got regular clients and your regular routes. So maybe what I'm trying to achieve is nothing to you. But to me, I'm quite pleased I'm achieving a target that I'm getting most weeks. And I'm quite new. And I think that I don't have to have done this job for years and years and years to be getting a wage that works for me, which is another reason why I love this job. It pays what I'm worth. Yeah, so I think I just wanted to talk about prices. I could talk about prices all day, every day, because it's so interesting. And also, what's interesting is your approach to pricing. It is so different, and I'm not saying it's right or wrong. It's just how we approach it. I saw Dave's video today, and he made a big point, which I really agree with, about sticking to pricing. That you're sticking to what he wants to do his pricing for. Dave, this is Dave from Anvil Logistics. If you don't know who I'm talking about, I'm sure you do. But he made a point about sticking to his prices because, but really out of principle. And he was saying stuff about, you know, going lower and regretting it. And I think I would feel exactly the same. I know what I feel I'm worth. I'm not going to underprice my services because other people do. Yeah, so I suppose I'm going to do that. So thank you for listening. It's been another long video, but I wanted to get in a lot of stuff today, and sort of just share a lot of different stuff. Thank you for listening. I will get home now and work tomorrow, and I'll do my weekly summary tomorrow. What have you learnt today?